Imagine the quiet rhythm of your heart, beating steadily through decades of life, carrying oxygen, nutrients, and life itself to every corner of your body. For those over 60, this rhythm has endured countless stresses, dietary choices, and lifestyle pressures, yet it remains remarkably resilient. And yet, hidden within everyday meals, there exist subtle saboteurs, foods that over time quietly erode this resilience, stiffen arteries, and provoke inflammation that the body struggles to repair. These are not dramatic, glaring dangers. They are ordinary, familiar items that, consumed regularly, accelerate the decline of cardiovascular health, particularly in an aging heart that has already faced decades of wear and tear. Understanding these foods is not about fear, it is about insight, recognizing the delicate balance between nourishment and harm, and giving the heart the opportunity to thrive in later years. The first of these harmful influences is found in foods high in trans fats. These chemically altered fats interfere with the body's natural lipid management, raising LDL cholesterol and lowering HDL cholesterol. Over decades, trans fats deposit in arterial walls, forming plaques that restrict blood flow, increase blood pressure, and provoke subtle inflammation. This process is silent but relentless, gradually narrowing the channels through which life itself flows. Even small, repeated exposures have cumulative effects, emphasizing the importance of vigilance and informed choice. Highly processed sugars represent another hidden threat. While the body can metabolize natural sugars with relative efficiency, refined sugars spike blood glucose, leading to insulin surges, oxidative stress, and systemic inflammation. Over time, these metabolic disturbances weaken vascular walls, impair endothelial function, and increase the risk of heart rhythm irregularities. Aging hearts are particularly vulnerable, as the reparative mechanisms that once corrected minor damage slow with time. What may feel like a harmless treat can subtly undermine decades of cardiovascular resilience, highlighting the interconnectedness of metabolism and heart health. Excessive sodium, often hidden in packaged foods, further compounds these challenges. High sodium intake elevates blood pressure, forcing arteries to endure constant stress. Over years, this pressure can lead to arterial stiffening, microtears in vascular walls, and a higher likelihood of plaque formation. The heart itself must work harder to maintain circulation, and even modest increases in blood pressure create incremental stress that accumulates silently, quietly eroding vitality. Red and processed meats also hold consequences that are often underestimated. Saturated fats, advanced glycation end products, and certain preservatives contribute to endothelial dysfunction and inflammation. Over decades, these compounds provoke vascular aging, compromising the artery's ability to expand and contract in response to demand. Finally, refined carbohydrates and heavily processed snacks play a dual role, combining rapid glucose spikes with low nutrient density. Their consumption amplifies inflammation, contributes to dyslipidemia, and often accompanies deficiencies in protective micronutrients that support heart function. For an aging heart, this combination can accelerate deterioration in a way that is subtle but significant. Each of these 5 categories demonstrates a profound principle. The heart is extraordinarily resilient, but also extraordinarily sensitive to repeated insults over time. Through conscious, informed dietary choices, it is possible to mitigate decades of accumulated stress, restore flexibility, and support the circulatory system in maintaining its rhythm, energy, and vitality even after 60. The foods we choose are not merely fuel, they are messages to our cells, our arteries, and our heart itself, shaping the trajectory of health and life in ways both immediate and profound. Highly processed sugars are one of the most underestimated threats to heart health, especially for adults over 60, because their impact is both pervasive and gradual. Unlike natural sugars found in fruits and vegetables, which come packaged with fiber, vitamins, and antioxidants, refined sugars are stripped of these protective elements and absorbed rapidly into the bloodstream. This sudden influx of glucose triggers a spike in blood sugar levels, prompting the pancreas to release insulin to help regulate and store the sugar. Over time, repeated spikes create metabolic stress, leading to insulin resistance, a condition in which cells become less responsive to insulin. Insulin resistance is not just a marker of metabolic imbalance, it has profound implications for vascular health. It promotes inflammation, disrupts endothelial function, and increases the likelihood of plaque formation in arteries, subtly undermining the cardiovascular system over years and decades. The oxidative stress caused by high sugar intake further compounds the problem. When the body metabolizes refined sugars, it produces free radicals, unstable molecules that can damage proteins, lipids, and DNA. Arteries are particularly vulnerable to this damage. The endothelium, the delicate inner lining of blood vessels, is responsible for regulating vascular tone, facilitating nutrient exchange, and producing molecules like nitric oxide that allow arteries to relax and maintain flexibility. Excessive sugar intake impairs this function, reducing nitric oxide availability and contributing to arterial stiffness. Stiffened arteries force the heart to work harder to pump blood, elevating blood pressure and increasing the risk of cardiovascular events. In older adults, who naturally experience a gradual decline in endothelial responsiveness, this effect is amplified, making every sugary meal a subtle but meaningful stressor on the heart. Systemic inflammation triggered by refined sugars is another critical mechanism by which these foods harm the cardiovascular system. Chronic low-grade inflammation encourages the accumulation of lipids in arterial walls, promotes clot formation, and can exacerbate pre-existing plaque. It also interferes with the body's repair mechanisms, slowing the recovery of damaged endothelial cells and perpetuating a cycle of vascular deterioration. Over time, this inflammatory environment accelerates arterial aging, increasing susceptibility to heart attacks, strokes, and other circulatory complications. Even moderate consumption of sugary foods, if habitual, contributes cumulatively to this process, illustrating how dietary patterns, rather than isolated meals, shape long-term cardiovascular resilience. The indirect effects of sugar on heart health are equally significant. Refined sugar intake often accompanies deficiencies in essential nutrients, as sugary foods are low in vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants. This lack of protective nutrients further weakens the vascular system, leaving arteries less equipped to manage oxidative stress, inflammation, and metabolic challenges. Additionally, excessive sugar can promote weight gain and visceral fat accumulation, both of which place additional strain on the heart and exacerbate insulin resistance. The combined effect of these mechanisms creates a silent erosion of heart health, one that unfolds gradually but relentlessly over decades. For adults over 60, understanding the multifaceted impact of highly processed sugars is essential for preserving cardiovascular function. By recognizing that sugar affects the heart not only through metabolic stress, but also through inflammation, endothelial impairment, and oxidative damage, individuals can make informed dietary choices that support resilience and vitality. Limiting refined sugars, replacing them with nutrient-dense alternatives, and stabilizing blood glucose levels allows the body to repair, arteries to remain flexible, and the heart to maintain its steady, life-sustaining rhythm, highlighting the profound influence of habitual dietary choices on long-term cardiovascular health. Excessive sodium, particularly from processed and packaged foods, poses a significant threat to heart health, especially for individuals over 60, as the aging cardiovascular system becomes more sensitive to pressure and stress. Sodium is an essential mineral for fluid balance and nerve signaling, but when consumed in high amounts, it forces the body to retain water to maintain equilibrium. This additional fluid increases blood volume, which in turn elevates blood pressure. Over time, consistently high blood pressure, hypertension, places a continuous mechanical stress on arterial walls, contributing to their gradual stiffening and reduced elasticity. Arteries that cannot expand and contract efficiently increase the workload on the heart, forcing it to pump against greater resistance with each beat.
For an older adult whose heart and arteries have already endured decades of stress, this silent burden accelerates vascular aging and creates conditions ripe for cardiovascular events. The microstructural consequences of high sodium intake are equally concerning. Elevated blood pressure can produce tiny tears in the endothelium, the thin layer of cells lining the arteries. These microtears act as sites where cholesterol and other lipids accumulate, initiating plaque formation. Plaque, over time, narrows the lumen of the arteries, restricts blood flow, and heightens the risk of clot formation, which may result in heart attacks or strokes. For someone over 60, even small increases in blood pressure caused by excess sodium can magnify these risks as repair mechanisms slow with age and the cumulative burden of decades of dietary choices begins to manifest. The interplay between arterial stress, microtears, and plaque accumulation demonstrates how sodium acts not only as a direct contributor to hypertension, but also as an indirect agent of vascular damage. Inflammatory processes are also influenced by high sodium intake. Studies suggest that excess sodium can activate inflammatory pathways, particularly in older adults whose immune and vascular systems are already sensitized by years of oxidative stress and environmental exposures. Inflammation further compromises endothelial function, reducing the production of nitric oxide, which is essential for arterial dilation. With impaired nitric oxide signaling, arteries lose their flexibility, blood flow becomes more turbulent, and the heart must work harder to maintain effective circulation. Legs and other extremities, being farther from the heart, often experience the first signs of this decline through fatigue, cramps, or coldness, reflecting the broader impact of vascular stress on daily life. Sodium's influence on the renin-angiotensin system, a hormonal network that regulates blood pressure and fluid balance, further compounds cardiovascular strain. Excessive sodium can disrupt this system, increasing vasoconstriction, retaining additional fluid, and perpetuating high blood pressure. Combined with other dietary and lifestyle factors, these disruptions contribute to a cycle of strain that is particularly challenging to reverse after 60. The cumulative effect of years of high sodium intake is not immediately apparent, but manifests as reduced arterial resilience, increased cardiac workload, and heightened vulnerability to vascular complications. Understanding the mechanisms by which sodium affects the cardiovascular system underscores the importance of moderation and dietary awareness. Reducing processed foods, monitoring salt intake, and favoring natural, minimally processed foods can help alleviate stress on arteries, support endothelial function, and promote healthier blood pressure levels. For older adults, these strategies do more than prevent hypertension. They actively maintain the flexibility, strength, and integrity of the vascular system, allowing the heart to sustain its life-sustaining rhythm while reducing the risk of age-related circulatory complications.
Red and processed meats are among the most significant dietary contributors to cardiovascular decline, particularly in individuals over 60, because their long-term consumption subtly erodes arterial health and vascular resilience. These foods contain high levels of saturated fats, which influence cholesterol metabolism and promote the accumulation of low-density lipoprotein, or LDL cholesterol, in the bloodstream. LDL cholesterol, often referred to as bad cholesterol, tends to deposit along the walls of arteries, forming plaques that gradually narrow and stiffen these critical pathways. As arteries lose elasticity, the heart must work harder to pump blood, increasing cardiac workload and elevating blood pressure. For an older adult whose arteries have already undergone years of stress and exposure to oxidative damage, this additional strain accelerates vascular aging and raises the risk of heart attacks and other circulatory complications. Beyond saturated fats, red and processed meats also contain advanced glycation end products, AGEs, compounds formed during high-temperature cooking or processing. AGEs contribute to oxidative stress and inflammation within arterial walls, directly impairing endothelial function. The endothelium, a delicate layer of cells lining the arteries, regulates blood flow, maintains vascular tone, and produces nitric oxide, a signaling molecule essential for vessel relaxation and flexibility. When AGEs accumulate, they stiffen the endothelium, reduce nitric oxide availability, and make arteries less responsive to the dynamic demands of blood circulation. Over time, this process not only restricts blood flow, but also enhances the likelihood of plaque formation and increases the risk of clotting events, creating a silent but significant burden on the cardiovascular system. Preservatives and additives commonly found in processed meats exacerbate these effects. Sodium nitrites, phosphates, and other chemical preservatives contribute to vascular inflammation, oxidative stress, and endothelial dysfunction. These compounds can disrupt cellular signaling, promote oxidative damage, and interfere with the body's natural repair mechanisms, which become less efficient with age. The combination of saturated fats, AGEs, and chemical additives produces a cumulative impact that quietly undermines arterial flexibility, blood flow, and overall cardiovascular health, particularly in adults over 60 whose systems are already experiencing age-related decline. Inflammation triggered by red and processed meats also extends beyond the arteries. Systemic inflammation influences lipid metabolism, insulin sensitivity, and cellular repair processes throughout the body. Chronic inflammation creates an environment in which arteries cannot recover effectively, and plaque formation progresses unchecked. For aging adults, this means that habitual consumption of these foods gradually impairs circulation, reduces oxygen delivery to muscles and organs, and increases the risk of fatigue, cramping, and diminished mobility in the legs and extremities. Furthermore, red and processed meats are often consumed in combination with refined carbohydrates, sugars, and other processed foods, creating a dietary pattern that amplifies cardiovascular risk. These synergistic effects accelerate endothelial dysfunction, arterial stiffening, and plaque accumulation, highlighting the importance of mindful food choices in later life. For someone over 60, reducing the intake of red and processed meats is not simply a matter of preference. It is a strategic intervention to preserve vascular integrity, maintain arterial flexibility, and support overall heart function, demonstrating how cumulative dietary decisions influence cardiovascular resilience and long-term health. Refined carbohydrates and heavily processed snacks pose a significant yet often overlooked threat to heart health, particularly for individuals over 60, because their impact extends beyond simple caloric intake to complex metabolic and vascular disturbances. These foods, including white bread, pastries, packaged crackers, sugary cereals, and snack foods, are rapidly digested and absorbed, causing sharp spikes in blood glucose levels. The body responds with a surge of insulin, the hormone responsible for transporting glucose into cells for energy or storage. Over time, repeated insulin surges lead to insulin resistance, a condition where cells become less responsive to insulin. Insulin resistance is not just a precursor to type 2 diabetes, it has profound consequences for cardiovascular health. It promotes systemic inflammation, contributes to endothelial dysfunction, and accelerates the accumulation of arterial plaque, all of which quietly undermine the resilience and flexibility of the vascular system, particularly in older adults whose repair mechanisms are already slowed by age. Refined carbohydrates further exacerbate arterial vulnerability. Rapid glucose spikes increase the production of free radicals, unstable molecules that can damage proteins, lipids, and DNA within the vascular system. Arteries, particularly the delicate endothelial lining, are highly sensitive to oxidative damage. Endothelial cells regulate blood vessel dilation through the release of nitric oxide, which allows arteries to expand and contract in response to the body's changing circulatory demands. When oxidative stress impairs this function, arteries become stiffer and less responsive, forcing the heart to work harder with each contraction and increasing the risk of elevated blood pressure, fatigue, and decreased oxygen delivery to muscles and organs. For adults over 60, this cumulative stress can amplify age-related decline in vascular flexibility, accelerating cardiovascular aging and increasing the risk of serious events such as heart attacks and strokes. Another consequence of heavily processed snacks is nutrient displacement. These foods are typically low in vitamins, minerals, fiber, and antioxidants that protect cardiovascular health. Diets high in refined carbohydrates often leave individuals deficient in nutrients such as magnesium, potassium, and B vitamins, which are critical for blood pressure regulation, endothelial function, and cellular repair. The absence of these protective nutrients compounds the harm caused by sugar spikes and inflammation, creating a perfect storm for vascular decline. The habitual consumption of refined carbohydrates and processed snacks demonstrates a fundamental principle in cardiovascular health. Repeated, subtle insults accumulate over time, shaping the resilience or vulnerability of the heart and arteries. By replacing these foods with nutrient-dense, minimally processed alternatives, individuals over 60 can reduce inflammation, stabilize blood glucose, support endothelial function, and preserve arterial